pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello, BookTube. I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with another, in other words, an occasional series, which is becoming more and more regular of late, in which I discuss interesting vocabulary, turns of phrase, idioms, grammatical patterns that I encounter in my reading. And this is the special Victober edition, part 1 of 2. I have so much interesting stuff that I encountered this month, that I have been encountering this month. Victober is not over. That it's going to be a two-parter, and in fact, to keep it down to two 20-minute videos, I'm going to have to go a little faster than usual. So, fasten your seatbelts. Today's vocabulary comes from 2 novels only, because there was so much. The first one is Charlotte Young's 1853 novel, The Heir of Redcliffe. I just posted a full review a couple hours ago. Go check that out if you're interested. It's an obscure novel that I want to... What's the opposite of obscure? I want to make it famous. That's the opposite of obscure. So, can you help me with that? Lots of great words in here. Hobbledehoy. Charles, my favorite character. I talk about him at some length in my review. When he first meets Guy, the hero of the novel, he is a little skeptical because that's his nature. And he thinks that Guy is just a hobbledehoy, which is a clumsy or awkward youth. Nobody knows exactly where it came from. There's been a lot of etymological debate, but it seems like it comes from the hob of hobgoblin, which means clown or prankster. The second element maybe comes from Middle French. Never heard of Middle French, but that makes sense. Middle English, so why not Middle French, right? The meaning of dehay is worthless, untamed, wild. So hobbledehoy. A lot of discussion as Guy enters the Edmonton household. One neighbor friend, I think is she a cousin or just a neighbor, Mary, says about Guy, his manners are quite the pink of courtesy. The pink of courtesy is a phrase from Romeo and Juliet, but vaguely in the back of my brain, I've heard the pink of, he's in the pink of health. So the pink of means the best condition or degree. So the pink of courtesy means he was very courteous. If you knew me in the late 1980s, you might have said, Sean is the pink of gay. This one was very interesting. I won't give the whole context, but again, talking about Guy, people, they're sizing him up and they're saying, again, Charles thought that Guy was not yet out of his leading strings. So he was on his best behavior. Leading strings, I'll show you some pictures, but they were, what do you call the thing with wheels where you put the baby in and it's a circular thing and they kind of learn how to walk? Well, this was the 17th and 18th European version of that. It was basically like a child leash where you would pull your child as they were learning to walk. So idiomatically here, Guy was just getting his bearings, learning the ropes, if I can use that kind of work-related idiom to apply to fitting into his new family. He didn't feel that he was out of his leading strings. Again, I'm not going to explain the whole context from the novel, but there's a sentence, little he recked of her, R-E-C-K-E-D, he recked of her. That was a new one for me. Although, now that I think about it, I do my best thinking when I'm talking. It's probably etymologically connected to reckon, I think, because it means to have care, concern, or regard about someone, to take heed, to pay attention, or this archaic meaning, which I think is the one that fits the novel, to be of concern, important, or matter. So he didn't care about her, little he recked of her. But it also means to pay attention, which I think fits with reckon, but I'm not going to take the time to check, but I think that's a brilliant connection I just made. Stop the etymological printing presses. Somebody, Mr. Edmonton, he's quite prone to high dudgeon, which is one of my favorite phrases, and the phrase here that I'd never heard of is he was in a pet, which is being sulking, being in a bad mood, in ill humor. He was in a pet. Wonder why? Anybody know why? I didn't find anything. Hey guys, well I did some more digging after I got home, and in fact, this expression, to be in a pet here is a clipping, a short form of petulance, to be petulant. So if you're in a pet, it means you are being petulant. I encountered the idiom to make ducks and drakes of something. Well, ducks and drakes, I learned, is the British phrase for skipping rocks, or skimming rocks, or to play ducks. Both are. Make ducks and drakes, I guess, is American English. Play ducks and drakes is British English, but stone skipping. And it came to mean idiomatically over time to squander one's energy, to deal with someone or something recklessly. Well a day! Now some of you Brits out there tell me how it should be pronounced, but that's how when I read the hyphenated phrase, that's how I would say it. It's an exclamation of sorrow or lamentation, similar to alas, sometimes preceded with ah well a day, or oh well a day. Now archaic and regional. Which region do you come from if you still use or hear this phrase? Or it originated in the late 16th century. The earliest use found in the ballad by William Elderton. Alright, that's the vocabulary that I got out of the Heir of Redcliffe. Let's move on to Elizabeth Gaskell's Wives and Daughters, which I'm not finished yet. I've got about 3 hours or 4 hours left on audio. Black-a-vised. It's a phrase in Irish English, regional English, and Scottish and Northern English. It just means dark complexioned or swarthy. Black-a-vised presumably comes from blackamoor. This one is so... do I have any subscribers from Warwickshire? I really need you for this one. This is a sentence, I'll read you the sentence. Molly returned home to the home which was already strange, and what Warwickshire people would call unked to her. So this is Warwickshire dialect. Unked means strange or lonely. Only in Warwickshire. And if you Google it, almost every reference is to this novel. Elizabeth Gaskell did not grow up there, but went to boarding school there, Wikipedia tells me. So, unked. This was a really interesting sentence. Molly's getting ready to meet her stepsister, Cynthia, who's older. She's never met her. And there's this sentence in parentheses. She called her a sister, but whether it was a Scotch sister or a sister à la mode de Brétagne would have puzzled most people. So, 2 phrases in that little enigmatic little sentence. Scotch sister. Gaskell's twisting the Scotch cousin phrase, which means a distant relative. And apparently the Scotch are famous for not only hanging their tea bags on the line, but tracing their kinship to remote degrees. So a Scotch cousin might be a 17th cousin twice removed. So she's using Scotch sister, like a remote sister. Not exactly. And the only reference that I could find, and it's to explain, the reference I found is embedded in a footnote on a Google Books doc, which of course you can't copy and paste, so I've got a GIF, which I'm going to pull up here in a minute, and the purpose of it is to explain this sentence in this Gaskell novel to the other expression. This one, I'm not good at pronouncing it. I double-checked. Brétagne, Brittany, right? In France. So, here's the direct quote from an article called A Sister à la Mode de Brétagne in Gaskell, in the literary journal or the academic journal called Victoria. Actually, no, it's an online news group, so it comes from the internet somewhere. Uncles and aunts à la mode Brétagne are the first cousins of one's parents. Nephews and nieces à la mode Brétagne are the children of one's first cousins. So then this professor, somebody Paul, goes on to explain, so Cynthia isn't technically Molly's sister, but they're similar ages, and the relationship of their parents leads to the fanciful coinage, a more intimate suggestion of kinship than stepsister would offer. So very interesting. How many uncles and aunts à la mode Brétagne do you have? First cousins of one's parents. Oh my God, I have probably 30 or more. That's interesting. Okay, this was fascinating. Cynthia and her mother, Mrs. Gibson, are arguing about Cynthia's relationship or relationship potential with a man in the novel. And Cynthia stands up to her mother and says, "One man may," and then in the novel, Mrs. Gibson, her mother, cuts her off and says, "Be quiet, child! All proverbs are vulgar." And I'm thinking, what was the proverb? One man may. And I Googled it, and there was a maybe BBC masterpiece theater dramatization of this novel, and in that script, the full proverb is rendered. Here's a direct quote from the TV script. Cynthia: "In short, Mama, the one man may steal a horse, the other mustn't look over the hedge." Her mother says, "Oh, do be quiet, child. All proverbs are vulgar." So she doesn't cut her off. So the proverb is, one man may steal a horse, the other mustn't look over the hedge. And the meaning, I'd never heard of it, had you? Is people take different degrees of liberty depending on our opinion of them. Very interesting. That one is so true. If you're the teacher's pet, you can get away with a lot more than if you're the bane of your teacher's existence. All right, the last one. This is a confrontation between Mrs. Gibson and Mr. Gibson. And Mr. Gibson says at one point in frustration with his wife, "Well, I suppose as one brews, one must bake." And this was... I need your help with this one because the only explanation I could find was hidden behind an Oxford reference paywall. So it means how you begin something determines how you will finish it. But there's some connection historically between brewing and baking. And I got the first half of the sentence, and you click on the link and you have to pay to subscribe or whatever to get the whole explanation. So if anybody can flesh that one out, that would be great. But this was fun, and stay tuned for the next couple days for part 2. Well, I forgot to do my usual wrap-up, so here I'm in another location to finish that up. I'm not sure that this has been the pink of erudition, but I have done my best. I hope that you will reck of me well, and that I haven't just been making ducks or drakes of my time spent preparing to shoot this video. And sorry I kind of messed up the ending, but as one brews, one must bake. And lastly, I think if Steve Donahue had done this video, it would have been a lot more erudite, and you would have learned a lot more. But as they say, the one man may steal a horse, the other mustn't look over the hedge. Give me a break. Thanks for watching.